I'd love to talk about Beast Code. They're one of many companies I've helped, but Beast Code is a bit unique in that it was started, as the CEO, Matt Zimmerman, would say, 7 dudes with a good idea. They are a software company. They figured out how to help the Navy solve a problem when the Navy had a real problem to solve. They recognized that, hey, this could be a reliable customer and we could help the Navy solve other problems, but they didn't quite know how to get at that. I was introduced to Beast Code as somebody that they should get to know, and I came forward with some ideas about how they might change their approach a little bit and maybe change their outcomes dramatically. And we've done just that over the last several years. We have orchestrated messages that have gone to the Navy customer and to Congress, but that have accelerated outcomes many-fold. And we've been able to do it over and over and over again in not just the initial customer that we started out with, but in multiple adjacent customers. And that same concept can apply to any company. It doesn't matter what you're selling. Beast Code is selling software and solutions. They have digital visualization tools, but there are all sorts of products and services that could benefit from the same sort of process. So in the government, the budget is broken out by budget lines and budget accounts. So there are procurement accounts, and then within a procurement account, there are variations of that account for ships, for aircraft, for helicopters, for tanks. When a particular class of ship needs a product or service, they are funded through a single budget line. A second or third class of ship are funded by different budget lines. And similar concepts apply to any platform or any domain of the Department of Defense. And so each budget line could be considered an adjacency. An adjacency could be from a Navy aviation need to an Army aviation need. If the Navy needed it and bought it, they just eliminated the risk for the Army to buy it or for the Air Force to buy it. And so helping the client recognize how to take that success from one agency to another, I would call that an adjacent opportunity. Austal USA came to America. It's an Australian parent-owned company, but Austal USA is the US entity based in Mobile. They came to America and were to participate in the littoral combat ship. At the time, it was to be a very large program. The program began. There were multiple competitors. The Navy made some incredible decisions in retrospect to have 2 vendors produce 2 variants of a littoral combat ship. They began to build the ship before the design was complete. That led to all kinds of problems and finger pointing. It was a time when Austal might have gone out of business because the Navy was threatening to cancel the program. Austal recognized an opportunity to put correct facts on the table and worked with the Navy and worked with Congress to make sure the correct facts were understood. And the program survived, and those ships are deployed today. It was an imperfect program for many, many reasons, not based on the performance of the shipbuilder singularly, but by a decision-making process that really failed. It was overcome, and fortunately for the United States, it was overcome, because today Austal USA builds multiple products across multiple services, serving the United States Navy, the United States Coast Guard, and today is being considered to help build submarine components, a concept that was not even on anyone's scope just a few years ago. But the industrial base has changed dramatically, and Austal has proven agile enough to be able to maneuver in that space. I'm proud to represent a company like that that's so much a part of solving big problems. We work to share correct information to help decision makers make the best decisions that they can make. That's for the good of the company and the good of the nation. How do you move a tank? When I was a corporate lobbyist, one of the products we made was the M1000 trailer, which is how you move an Abrams tank. An Abrams tank is pretty darn heavy, and it doesn't just take a regular old trailer to move a tank. It takes a very fancy tank that has a lot of capability that can go in very difficult circumstances. If you think back a few years, there was a time when the Army was very vocally saying, we don't need any more tanks. Yet the industrial base did need more tanks, because if we stopped making tanks, we would forever lose the ability to make tanks. Because my company at the time made the trailer for the tank, it was also at risk of losing some business if we were to stop tank production. There were hundreds of jobs at stake in Missouri that depended on these products. The government knew that it needed these products. Although the Army wanted to move in a different direction, Congress understood the industrial base concern. We shared the story with Congress about what the implications were for this trailer that supports the tank. And we were able to tell that story to senior decision makers in Congress so that they understood the totality of the picture. That this wasn't just about tanks, it's about the things that go with tanks. And there were jobs at stake. There were industrial-based concerns that needed to be considered. And because we used our outside voice and spoke loudly and clearly, we were heard and were able to contribute to a different outcome than might have otherwise occurred. So a couple of years ago, there was concern in the United States that there were Chinese components in certain video surveillance systems throughout the United States. A video surveillance company came to me looking for help because they weren't quite sure what had happened to their federal business. And it turned out that Congress passed a law that said that any company that has components made by the Chinese company Huawei, and they named the company by name, they said, we won't buy anything from those vendors anymore. This company was wrongfully listed as someone who had components from Huawei. They did not. And we had to get that record corrected because there were $40 million of business at stake here. And suddenly that business dropped off. Well, we had to figure out how to take this message to the right people at the right place and time. And there were decision makers in the Office of the Secretary of Defense, decision makers on committees in Congress, where we explained that, hey, you've got the wrong guy. This is not us, but you've put us on a list and we can prove that we don't belong on this list. And we got that list retracted and republished such that the funding could be restored. That didn't make up for the lost sales that did occur. And these sort of mistakes happen regularly. But if you're a company where that's happening and you don't know how to engage the system, you can just suffer, and you don't have to suffer if you know where and how to have that conversation. We are a nation of a conflicted opinion of how to deal with China. And I say that because on one hand, if you were to ask almost anybody in a DoD decision-making position, they would tell you that China is the pacing threat for our major concerns in the world. And by that pacing threat, we mean someone that we need to keep up with. We need to invest in order to match their capability so that they don't outpace us. In some ways, they are outpacing us. Yet, we want consumer goods that are readily available and inexpensive, and we want access to them. And many of them come from China. We have many policies that have been written into law that are meant to shape our behavior toward China. One of them deals with rare earth materials. And rare earth materials are in important things like batteries and magnets. And some rare earth material is only available or only able to be processed in China. We might not like that. Some of these materials have to be processed in ways that are not so environmentally friendly. And we've allowed that capability to move offshore. We can wish it away and we can hope to have a different arrangement in the world, but the reality is that we need those materials if we're going to electrify the country. We need those rare earth materials if we're going to put the most specialized magnets in the most sophisticated systems. So think of any precision-guided weapon system. Think of some of our most exquisite combat systems and weapon systems in the Department of Defense rely on very high-end magnets that today require rare earth material. So if Congress writes a law, which it has done, that says no material from China, that causes problems because we have to figure out how else can we get this material. And so sometimes Congress writes laws that legislate to an end state without allowing for an appropriate ramp to get to that next end state. And so sometimes there need to be changes in the law, and we've done that. Sometimes an executive order needs to be written by the president, and we've done that. Sometimes we have to change policy in one area but not in another area, and we've done that. And our China policy writ large is riddled with these sort of workarounds and changes of policy from one agency to another. It is the way it is. We can wish that it were different, but if we want to have the lifestyle that we enjoy, if we want to have the products and services that we enjoy, we need to have various exceptions to some of these laws and policies.